there, it's Kevin with GatheringMagic.com with this week's episode of the Rogues Alley. I'm not going to do a playing on a budget this week because this is just an insanely fun deck. I was able to, when looking over some of the deck lists that went 5-0 on the Modern League, this one popped up and it's utilizing one of my favorite cards ever printed. Again, we're back to Eldrazi. I hope you're not getting sick of Eldrazi, but I mean, it's fun. These are cards that you can play from Standard in Modern right now, and that is a rare thing in today's Modern with a established metagame. It's very hard to break into the Modern format with a fresh new deck, and we're seeing a lot of Battle for Zendikar cards actually do that through the Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin being able to ramp them out. So I think there's a lot of more room to grow. I think someone needs to make a black-red aggro deck in Modern deck, like hyper-aggressive black-red aggro deck to reduce the cost through Eldrazi Temple and Eye of Ugin. I think that is a pretty neat little synergy that has some potential. But anyway, this one is using Heartless Summoning, which is one of my favorite cards ever printed. Ever since Innistrad, I had a Heartless Summoning deck back then to cheat out Wurmcoil Engines and Phyrexian Metamorphs, and I think that what I try to do is it was Heartless Tezzeret. So use Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, and a lot of just, you could use Trinket Mage and Treasure Mage. They're both in the format, and with Heartless Summoning, they only cost 1 blue, and you could just put a ton of artifacts on the battlefield, Spellskites, Wurmcoil Engines. What else existed back in those days? There was plenty of cards that you could just get in for very, very cheap, and then, there was Solemn Simulacrum at the time, and then you could actually win with the Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, having your opponent lose double life of how many artifacts you control. So anyway, this is going to use Heartless Summoning as an engine. That you got to think of this deck like Tron or Scapeshift or any of the other ramp-based decks as trying to get a bigger threat than your opponent can deal with. So what this one is going to do is, we're back to the Eldrazi's, but this is not a process Eldrazi. It does have the Oblivion Sower, but we're not focused on exiling our opponent's card like the mono black or black white or black blue Eldrazi decks that are going around in Modern. What this one's whole goal is to get an Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, out. Now, the original deck list that this one had 4 Ulamogs. I tried to mix it up by adding a Void Winnower and a Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, as well as we have a Sundering Titan and a Platinum Angel in the sideboard, because there's some decks that these cards are just a blowout against, and I thought, just make it more interesting and put these in. So I've also, the original deck list, I don't think had as much of the discard cards. I believe he's running 6, and I'm going to run a full package of Inquisitions and Thoughtseizes, because what we want to do first turn with this deck is we want to disrupt their hand. We want to disrupt them from being able to, so that they usually will have one either aggressive card or like a counter card or some sort of removal that will shut down our ability to kind of chain off this really high converted mana cost threat. So you got to think of this as the same type of deck that mono black control had during Theros, is you wanted to always lead with the first turn Thoughtseize, get rid of their win condition or their ability to stop your win condition, and then just go from there. So we're going to run a whole 8 with Inquisitions and Thoughtseizes in this deck. And then the 4 Expedition maps are self-explanatory. This is just going to be another Eldrazi deck that wants to get out the Eye of Ugin and the Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth combo. So you probably should run 3 of each. I just didn't happen to have the 4th or the 3rd Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and they're way expensive on MTG at the moment. And so I need to pick up another one. So anyway, I'm just running a swamp in its place. So you have three Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoths and 3 Eye of Ugins. That's what I like to run. A lot of people like to run 4 and 4, but what ends up happening is I always get duplicates. And since these are legendary lands, it really throws off your curve getting stuck with an additional land in your hand. Now, there's a lot of hate for Eye of Ugin right now, like through Ghost Quarter, so you might actually want to run 4 of the Eye of Ugins, but because it is such, in this deck, you really need an Eye of Ugin. It ramps out the Oblivion Sower and Kozilek's Channelers and the Conduit of Ruins very quickly. Eldrazi Temple, of course, is going to be a 4 of because there's no drawback to this, and we're also going to run a 1 of Caverns of Souls because you name Eldrazi, and none of your Eldrazi's can be countered after that. So the other land in here is going to be Sanctum of Ugin, which I'm running a 2 of, which again could go up in count to a 3 of or a 4 of. But I'm just trying to make sure that I have enough black sources at the moment, because this deck does want to do that first turn Thoughtseize or Inquisition. So Sanctum of Ugin only works off of Ulamog or Kozilek or Void Winnower, but goes and gets you a second one. So if you cast a Void Winnower, you can go get Ulamog. If you cast a Kozilek, you can go get Ulamog and put it on top of the library. And at that point, if they are able to stop one of your win conditions, highly doubt they're going to be able to stop 2 of them. So The other ways to ramp into our big creatures is going to be, of course, Heartless Summoning, and then we have the Kozilek's Chandler, which can come out very, very quickly. So Eldrazi Temple into Kozilek's Chandler comes out a turn earlier. Eye of Ugin, Eldrazi Temple, you can get this out. Heartless Summoning, I think you can get this out turn 3 quite easily in this deck. There's many ways to do so. And then Oblivion Sower usually doesn't have as much value as it does in the other black Eldrazi decks because you're not exiling, you're not proactively exiling your opponent's stuff. But it's 4 cards. So statistically, you're going to get 1.3, 1.4 lands off of the average person's deck. So it's going to basically be sort of like a Solemn Simulacrum with a 5/8 body. Speaking of Solemn Simulacrum, I think the Solemn Simulacrum might fit well in this deck just because of its synergy with Heartless Summoning, and even Kozilek's Chandler being able to kind of reduce its cost and also get you that basic swamp and then draw you a card when it dies. But I'm not quite sure. I'm not sold on cards like Solemn Simulacrum. There's also another card I've been messing around with in this list, since we do run Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth, and a bunch of swamps, and Heartless Summoning, which is the Cryptghast. We'll bring up a Cryptghast here out of Gatecrash, because it does survive the Heartless Summoning. And then it says whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add black to your mana pool, in addition to the mana that it produces. So your Eye of Ugin can now tap for a black and a black when it is turned into a swamp by Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Your Eldrazi Temple can add 2 and a black from your Cryptghast to add Eldrazi. So it's another card I'm going to mess around with in the deck. We do have a little bit of removal in the deck, just a Doomblade and Go for a Throat. I've split them and in 2 in the sideboard, 2 in the main board of 1 of each, because Doomblade hits everything but Tasigur in the format, basically. There's not a lot of black creatures in... I mean, there's Wasteland Strangler that's Devoid, so you can actually hit it with the Doomblade. But there's the... just basically Tasigur and Dark Confidant, and Go for the Throat, though, does not hit anything out of Affinity. So I'm really wondering why a lot of people are running Go for the Throat since such a high count, when Affinity is the 3rd most played deck, and a lot of times it's the most played deck. In tournaments, you see Affinity do very well just because it keeps a lot of decks honest, because it puts them on a very fast clock, and it's a deck that needs to be shut down, otherwise it can just basically have a good matchup versus every deck if there is no hate against it. So Go for the Throat missing Affinity doesn't really sit well for me, so that's why I'm splitting it Doomblade and Go for the Throat. We'll have to mess around with it to see which one we like more, if we even care about Affinity, or if it even matters if Affinity is just going to overwhelm us before we can really do much. I'm running a 1 of Spellskite in here. It's really cool with Heartless Summoning because it's free, and you can also get it out quickly with a Kozilek's Chandler or a Conduit of Ruin. So then we're running the Sowers, the Conduit of Ruin. We've already explained what they do in this deck. 1 of Void Winnower that shuts down a lot of decks, and a Kozilek Butcher of Truth, because why not? It's just 10 mana for a 12/12 to draw 4 with Annihilator 4. I think that's very powerful in Modern. Probably not quite as powerful as Ulamog, exiling 2 permanents comes into play, but I just wanted to give this more flavor. So you can just mix and match with your big drops. Any one of these, if they're cast, they should just win the game. In the sideboard, we have a Leyline of the Void, just in case that they are a graveyard-based strategy. We have 4 Relic of Progenitus. They do work pretty nicely with the Oblivion Sower because, again, this just hoses out any sort of graveyard-based strategy. 2 more Spellskites against the Boggles, Splinter Twin decks. It's just something you can also protect your Heartless Summoning, sort of. You can protect against like Maelstrom Pulses. It can also protect your other creatures like your Kozilek's Chandlers, which are actually very important to ramping out. So I do like the Spellskites in the sideboard. And where I differ from the original deck designer's list is the sideboard here is a lot different. I think he runs more Duresses, and there is some more removal in the sideboard, like Slaughter Games, I believe, and a few other odds and ends. But I'm running 4 Wurmcoil Engines. This card is just brutal for a ton of decks to deal with. With Heartless Summoning or Kozilek's Chandler, you can get it out very, very quickly. It will be with Heartless Summoning with a 5/5 that spits out 2/2, so you lose a lot of value there. But still, a 5/5 Death Touch lifelink against the like Zeus or Burns or even Delver or Twin is very hard for them to deal with, because you're going to get 3 cards out of 1 card. And it's very good as like Kolaghan's Command. They destroy the Wurmcoil Engine. You still have two 2/2s left. And I really like Wurmcoil Engine in a deck that can get it out quickly. So this is perfectly fit in a deck that the Sower, the Kozilek's Chandler, the Conduit of Ruin, the Heartless Summoning can all ramp it. And yes, it doesn't work off Eldrazi Temple or Eye of Ugin, but that's fine. And there's still plenty of ways to get a quicker Wurmcoil Engine. And then there are certain decks that a Platinum, they just can't win. Like the Boggles, for example, if they don't have a Path to Exile, they cannot win versus Platinum Angel. If your opponent does not run any way to destroy an artifact or a creature, Platinum Angel can just win the game. So I do like having a one of in the sideboard just for those matchups, which it does happen in Modern. I think I was playing against like a lockout strategy. What was it? They just didn't play anyway. It was like Lightning Bolts was their only removal, and it was, I guess, Lightning Bolts with the Heartless Summoning could do it, but you can protect it with Spellskite, and it just could not remove Platinum Angel. And yeah. So the last one is Sundering Titan. If you go up against like a 3-color deck, Sundering Titan can destroy their 3 of their basic lands. It was against, I believe I've played this versus a mirror matchup, and with their Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth out and my Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth out, returning everything in swamp, you can actually choose one of their swamps and destroy it. But against a Scapeshift or a Teamer Delver deck, you can actually target a forest, an island, and a mountain, and then if you have an Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth out, one of their other lands for the swamp, and destroy 4 lands off the Sundering Titan. So I think that it's definitely worthwhile testing this card out to see how well we like it in the deck. So anyway, I've rambled enough about this deck, gone on way too long. We'll play some matchups here. This has been Kevin with GatheringMagic.com. Thanks for watching.